Hey, I'm Joe. So I'm continuing on my 1979 Honda CBX project. So I'm getting into the wiring today. So I've got a used wiring harness that I'm going to go through and see if I can get this set up on the bike. And there's a bunch of things that I have to do to get it ready. Enjoy. So this wiring harness I bought off of eBay. This is a used harness. So this is to a 81, I think, 81, 82 CBX. This is the Prolink model, which is a different model from mine. The reason I wanted to go with this wiring harness is because these ignition units are all separate. Now on the 79, the one that I have, all three of these are connected and it's a single connector. So those are special for just the CBX. And I didn't want to do that because most of the other CBs use these individual ones like this. So this is much easier for me to get replacements for. So there's also a couple extra wires and things that I can use if I want to. And real quickly, I just wrapped this harness. You can see this is electrical tape underneath. So I went and used this wrap that got really good reviews. So I'm gonna use this just to make it look a little bit nicer. And then I need to figure out how to feed this on the bike. So I think the easiest way to probably feed this is from this end. So it looks like there's a lot more stuff on this end, but I should be able to remove all of this. So I'll remove each of these. And I need to be very careful that I don't damage any of these connectors. Right, it's an old harness, right? It's 40 years old. And then this is for the tail lights, right? And then we have the turn signal relay. So I already took pictures of this. And you can see some of these are rusted on. Now I'm not going to be reusing this. So this is for the incandescent turn signals, which I'm not going to be using. If you run LEDs, then they may not flash or they may flash too fast. So I'll just replace this and they're very cheap to do so. You just need one specifically for LEDs. Okay, there's one. And then there's the other one. Now we need to remove this plug from the fuse box. I'm actually pretty surprised that this isn't broke. Every one that I've ever received, this was broken. So I wonder if I'll be able to get this off without breaking it. Look at that. There you go, not bad. Now we can see, oh look, there's an actual 30 amp fuse in there. I'm not going to be using this starter solenoid. I like to replace this with a blade starter solenoid, a blade fuse, and these are pretty easy to get. And I shouldn't have to use this either. I think I'll rewire a new one because you can see these wires are loose right here. We've removed most of these wires. This one can probably stay on. And then this is nice. This is also the rear brake. So whenever I push down on the rear pedal, right, pulls this out and it will tell the rear light that it needs to come on. So this is great because I did not have one of these. So what I've also done is cut a hole in my box right here, this under seat pan. So this will allow me to feed the wires into here. Now there's a lot of wires that need to go in and we'll see how this looks. But the wires need to feed from in here, up here, and then I'll go probably on the left side of this and then take the harness up here. Unless I want this to move over. Have the harness go up through there. That may actually work a little bit better because I think I have a little more room in here. Okay, so I want the wiring to go up through here. And then I need this wiring to feed down in between these. I can already tell this is going to be a fun process. I probably should have run this earlier, but I don't think it's going to be impossible to do this. Probably just going to take some patience. So I want to get these up here on top. Okay, that's supposed to sit there. And then to get an idea, let's run all of this wiring. All right, so I'm actually gonna pull this through even though it's not supposed to be up here. This may be something that we have to extend. Now this still needs to be powder coated, but I at least need to see where everything's going to go right before I powder coat if I have to make, cuts and changes and things to that. All right. Here's a bunch of the wiring up there. We've got the wiring coming down here. All right, it doesn't look like it's in the way of anything down there. Would be nice just to wrap this around here so this doesn't move. And then I can probably wire these in and then attach the ground. That'll be our point at which we know it has to come back here. So I'm gonna go to the wiring diagram so that we can look to see where each one of these wires plugs in, because we can get them in right now. All right, so here's the wiring diagram for the CBX. I also printed off copies of these just to show where the wiring and everything runs. So it does look like here. So it looks like the wiring harness does run through the left side of the bike, down the middle. So it does look like it's being fastened right there, which is where we have it. And then it comes down to the, looks like right side. And then it has clamping. So we have it just coming to the box that's sitting right here. And then what's typically on the CBX is this battery box that has all the connections tied to it. So we're trying to keep this area clean and move everything up to right under the seat. Now to go back to the wiring diagram, we can see that we have the ignition coils right here. And off this connector, we have, looks like white is W coming to 1. We have this next one coming to 2. This third one is 3, and then the fourth one, it looks like is ground that needs to connect to all the rest. So I'm gonna take a look and see if each one of these is colored. So on this connector, I've got yellow, blue, pink, and then black with a white stripe. This must be, I guess, this ground cable, because this needs to get plugged into each one of these ignition coils. And then I need to figure out which of the colors needs to plug into those 3. So I ended up printing the wiring diagram from a 1981 and 82 Honda CBX. And now we've got the correct harness diagram here. So I can see that the ignition coils right here, these are the colored wires. So it looks like it's set up. So this is the left side of the bike, which is 1. So black needs to go to the outside of this coil. So it goes black, yellow goes to number 3, and then pink goes to number 2. Oh, B is actually blue, it looks like. Yep. So blue's gonna plug in right here. It does look like this is a little loose. So we'll tighten that a little bit because I don't want that to come off while I'm riding, obviously. Clamp them down just a little tighter. Yeah, that'll be good. The next one is pink. So I'll run this one underneath. And then the last one is yellow, and that goes to number 3. that. All right, and then we need to run these as well. So I'll just connect them like this. Connect it there. And the final connection is gonna go right there. Hopefully these aren't reversed. I'll have to check a little bit later to see if there's a plus or minus underneath. And this ground is coming off of, so it looks like the main harness. We have, looks like a ground here, but it doesn't tell us obviously where this plugs into the bike. And I'm pretty sure it's supposed to attach to the top of one of these. But I'll have to do a little checking to see if that's correct. All right, so I'll double check that later, but this should be correct. And we've got metal here, which should ground here, and then that will ground down into the frame. And we can actually test this ground. So we'll just take voltmeter, we'll set it on sound. We touch these together, it does make noise. So if I touch that to a place with open metal, it doesn't seem to be grounding at all. So let's clean up this just a bit. Let's do this on both sides. So let's do a better job of grounding this. So pull this out and let's connect it to that. Okay, this is an 8mm. And let's angle this just a bit. All right, so this is working much better now. It's grounded properly. Yep, as I'm touching other screws, I do have a good ground connection. I needed to make a longer bracket for the ignition. So what I did was I just modeled it after the bracket that it came with. I just extended it out and then 3D printed it. And I made it a little bit thicker, right, because it's a different material. So I made this about 8mm, and it looks like everything fits in really well. Hopefully it'll be rigid enough. And then I had to go to AutoZone because I needed a nut that fit this. Unfortunately, they didn't have a single one, so I bought an entire kit of metric bolts. So now I've got another 500 pieces of hardware that I can use for the rest of this build. So let's go see if we can mount this up. I want to mount the ignition right here. So I want it up as high as I can, away from the engine heat. And then I need to put a nut on the backside in order to get this to sit properly. So that's in all the way there. That looks like a good location. So key-wise, I can always rotate this a little bit, but here. So this will hold it so that I can easily change it there. So rigidity is pretty good. I probably could have made it a little bit thicker, but now I need to wire from this end. I also won't have anything dangling from this key. I'll just have this key by itself. And that'll work. So what I'll do now is I'll just go and I'll clip all of these wires. Just like that. These are the ones that I'm going to use. And I don't think I even need these split. I think I can just use one of them. So I'm going to run them back through, and then I'm going to clip off. Actually, I will clip this off now since I'm not going to use it. So It's one less wire to worry about. So I will run these back through, and then I will wire extensions onto these because I'm pretty sure these are not going to fit. So I'll strip these, may use bullet connectors, may just solder, we'll see. All right, so let's get this ignition wired up. So I got, these are 3 colors that I'm gonna use. So I've got battery, ignition, and then accessory. So I'll strip, let me see how. These are the connectors I want these to go into. So they don't need to be, don't need very much. I think it's just that very end that I need, which looks very small. So let's try. Let's do 14. Do a little more than that. Yeah, that looks good. So I did bend this up a little bit just because I don't want it sprawled out in all directions. Okay, and then what we'll do is use insulated. This. Let's make sure I can still screw this in. Yep, let's check continuity real quick. So I want this on tone so that when these touch, they make noise. So let's see, right now, we're in the off position. So it doesn't matter what we touch. None of this is going to make a tone. Okay, now if I go to the right, which should be turned on, I think all of these should contact. Yep, which is correct. Now if I go back the other way, this is where only accessories is on, which works, and ignition does not on either of them. Yep, so we know this is ignition, that's correct. So one of these is battery, one of these is accessories, and we will just reference the diagram, so it really doesn't matter, but we'll just follow it. So if that says ignition is there, that means this is battery. So battery will go in there. Okay, and we got our last one on, which is accessories. Okay, so that's tight. All right, I'm not gonna bend them up too much more than that. I don't want these to break, but this is fine. So now what I'm gonna do is put a connector at the end, and this will give us a place to plug into the harness. So let's make sure all of these are the correct length. We want the same length. And I'll just go to the end. So these are the connectors. I'm gonna put this one on the harness. So I'm gonna use this one on the ignition. So when we cut these, I wanna make sure I can get the wire to about there. And I want the insulation down from there. This. There's the yellow. There's black. And there's red. And then what we'll do is we'll also wrap this. Now I used to use electrical tape, but over time electrical tape, at least the kind that I was buying, was starting to get sticky. So a bunch of folks recommended this. can't remember the name of the wrap, but I'm giving this a shot. And now we have a nice cable for our ignition. Now to reinstall the ignition, I'll slide it back in here. So I had a pretty good fit on this. So it actually threads through, which is nice. That holds it in place. Okay, we're in a good spot there. So that'll fasten, prevent that from coming out. And then a nice little faceplate there. So I'm not gonna have this extra key hanging, but all right, ignition's in a good spot. And then I will run the ignition wiring up through here. And then I will add a connector to this end. All right, so this is the other end that needs to plug into the ignition. So these 3 sets of wires are what I want to keep. This one I'm not going to use right now. I'm just going to move this off to the side. These I need to wire together, and then they're going to go into the plug. Because the plug is so thin, I can't actually twist these and get them in. They won't seat real well. So what I'll do is I'll cut them back, I'll solder them together, and then I'll solder a new wire off of them. And then that is what will go in to the plug. So what I'll do is I'll probably cut them and go cut them about here. Let's do this. Cut right there. And what I'd like to do is maybe I'll just use another color wire that I had. All right, this green should work. I'll just pull off a bunch of the green. It would be good to get all of these twisted together. So there are a couple ways you can do this. So I folded each of them over, and then I'm going to solder. That didn't come out well at all, but at least the connection's made at this point. So now I can wrap these. So I'll use a bit of electrical tape on this one. Okay, we'll clamp down this first one. Red must go in this one. We got red and then black. Red, black, and then accessory. Okay. So all 3 of them clicked in. So that means we are good to connect them. And I'm actually going to wrap the rest of this. So now we've got the end that connects to the harness. And then we will run this up here and then connect it. So I will run this back. Under this harness, and then I should be able to connect it like this. So next I need to work on the wiring for the actual front headlight itself. So this harness is supposed to have another connector that then provides the connection for this. So this is pretty typical for front headlights, this 3-pin connector. So luckily, I have parts left over from other projects. So this is an adapter cable that comes with some of the headlights that I've purchased. This is if you had a different type of connector. This is for different style bikes. It's probably a little bit newer. But what I'll do is I want to use this connector. So I'll cut these and then I will wire them in here. So the cables I need are, yes, it's this one, because this is where I cut off this green cable. So I have a blue cable here, and then I have a white cable here. These have to go into the headlight. The other thing I need is a ground. So you can see there's no ground in here because what I was supposed to do was this adapter that plugs in here. This then grounds to the front fairing, but we don't have that. So I'm gonna have to use an existing green, and we'll have to splice into this. I'll probably cut this and then use a couple of those dual bullet adapters because I need a ground for the headlight. I also need a ground for the turn signals, both of them. So that's 3 grounds right there. I need this ground, which this is the plug that goes up to the gauges. So these are all the indicator lights. So all of these black cables need to plug into a ground as well. So I'll worry about that one later. But I need to cut into this. That way I can at least start branching off, and then I'll have grounds for a couple of these other lights. All right, so let's do some testing on the headlight. I'm gonna use my lithium-ion battery. This is the one that I'm gonna use inside the bike. I haven't charged this in a while, so I wanna make sure this at least has correct voltage and everything. So I'm gonna turn this on, and then let's check this real quick. All right, so it looks like I'm getting 13.2 volts from there. Okay, that's good. This red power. Let's plug it up to this terminal. And I'll take the green one on the negative. And then I will tap and hold. So now I'm going to move this over. See if this makes any difference. So we have low beam and high beam. So low beam, high beam, and then this is the ground.